In this report, I'm going to touch on what's going on in the Middle East, in various places such as Syria and also in Egypt. I will also touch on the Arab Spring and what has developed since it took place some 2 years ago. And we'll start with the Arab Spring. Back in late 2010, early 2011, the Arab Spring began to develop. Many were around the prophetic world were starting to talk about the possibility of a Psalm 83 war taking place, or this culminating into a Psalm 83 war. But of course, I declared that this is probably nothing more than a rise of an Islamic type Middle East. And that was based on some of the analysis that I had read, and that's basically what it's turned out to be. You know, as I've said before, it pays to do your homework. Then you don't start reading headlines and start calling things out that basically simply probably aren't possible. And let me give you an example. 2 years ago, many were saying that the Muslim Brotherhood would begin to take over the Middle East. And I don't discount that. They probably will. But the fall of these dictators, such as the Mubaraks and the Gaddafis and possibly al-Assad, who's probably going to fall within 6 months, I would say, are not going to make the Middle East a stronger Islamic bloc and or force against Israel, but a weaker bloc. I can tell you right now that Libya is definitely not as strong as they used to be under Gaddafi. They're basically in a civil war themselves and a rush to power. So I can say pretty assuredly that they are less of a threat to Israel than they were back a year ago when Gaddafi was still in power. And certainly he was in no hurry to attack Israel. He knows the limitations of his military, as shown when he was defeated some months ago. He knows himself that they're no match for a great Israeli military. And it should also be noted that many of the nations in the Middle East are funded and financed, and they get their parts from the United States. So if the United States were to drop out of the Middle East, that many of these nations would have no military whatsoever, at least not a formidable one. And if you haven't looked at a breakdown of who gets military financing from the United States, it's quite a few of the players in and around Israel. So even though they may be talking out loud that they're going to break the peace treaties or whatever the case may be with Israel, they know that privately that's not going to happen anytime soon. That's rhetoric that the masses want to hear, but it's not. In reality, it's simply not going to happen. At least not into the foreseeable future. And I can certainly say it's probably not going to happen on this side of the rapture. So I wouldn't look for anything to happen in the near future, especially an attack by Israel's neighbors against Israel anytime soon. They're simply too weak at this point in time. Syria has basically been reduced to a bunch of clans in which al-Assad happens to be the most powerful clan leader at the time, but as far as his military strength as a whole is concerned, he is in no shape to take on Israel. And I can tell you that no military analyst in the world would try to argue that al-Assad is ready to take on Israel. That's not going to happen. But this is building to something that will be significant in the future. Whether it'll be on this side of the rapture or not, I doubt it, but it will. Something will come about in which Israel's neighbors will come against Israel. In fact, the Bible says in Zechariah 12:3 that all nations will come against Israel at some point in time, and I do believe that's going to happen. That's probably going to be more into the tribulation period than before the tribulation period. Now let's touch on what is going on in Egypt right now with the Muslim Brotherhood. Again, a couple years back, everybody was talking about how ruthless and how strong the Muslim Brotherhood was, and that once they got into power, that they were going to take over. Well, I had taken the stance that that's not going to happen. They may win power, which they did, but they were nothing more than a puppet government for which the military would still be fully in control. And now we can see from this latest situation that's taking place, where Mr. Morsi has tried to pull a power move, and the people have risen up and taken to the streets, and he has gotten himself into a mess that he may not be able to get out of. And to solidify that the military is still in control, he actually had to call upon the military and almost beg them to protect him from the mobs and the people who were protesting, which were in the hundreds of thousands. And at this time, it's already been at least 2 of the Muslim Brotherhood offices have been burnt to the ground by thugs in and around Egypt. Now let me ask you this: does that sound like a man or an organization that is fully in control and a ruthless leader? Well, frankly, there have been reports that Morsi has left the palace and is basically in hiding at this point in time. How much that is true, I don't know. But we're finding out now that the military is still fully involved and is fully in control, and I don't foresee that being changed anytime soon. So even though Morsi has got all this rhetoric going on and that against Israel, and that they're going to do this and he's going to do that, he's going to take away the peace treaty and this and that, the military is quietly sitting back and saying, all right, let him do his talking, but the truth of the matter is that we're not going anywhere for now. They still need financial backing for the United States, and as long as they are at peace with Israel and are playing along with the rules that the United States puts forward, they're not changing anything, because they're a country that's in crisis right now, both economically and militarily. They need money. So don't look for that situation to change much. I'm not sure what's going to happen to Morsi, but we'll see in the future if he may be booted completely out of office. You never know. But again, that's just speculation on my part. I don't know what the future holds for him. But it's surely not the all-encompassing power that and the far-reaching powers that he was seeking. That's for sure, unless the military allows it to happen. Now let's touch on the Syrian crisis. Right now, Russia and the United States are engaged in seemingly urgent negotiations over Syria. The Syrian chemical weapons threat that the United States has been publicly emphasizing may provide an opportunity for Russia to regain leverage in Syria after the fall of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Right now, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held an impromptu 40-minute meeting December 6, hosted by the UN Arab League Special Envoy Lekhdar Brahimi on the sidelines of the European Security Meeting in Dublin. The meeting focused basically on what was going on with the Syrian chemical weapons and the activity in that area. But what Russia's trying to do is they want to maintain a stake in the post-al-Assad Syria. But this will be difficult because Russia has already entrenched itself in the Alawite elite, which is now battling for survival against an emboldened Sunni majority. However, the Syrian armed forces are a product of Soviet Cold War policy, and Russia has deep links with the military, security, and intelligence apparatus in Syria. Maintaining the institutional strength of the armed forces while eliminating the al-Assad clan is a major imperative for the United States and allies pushing for al-Assad's ouster. Russia could provide some assistance in this regard. Well, how Russia could probably play a part in this is that Russia could offer to secure the chemical weapons sites by sending its own teams into the country, though it would likely only do so as part of a broader agreement with the United States and the al-Assad government. Russia has a large intelligence footprint in Syria and played a role in building Syria's weapons programs. As rebels have closed in on Damascus, the regime has intensified efforts to seek political asylum for al-Assad and his associates. Russia could negotiate amnesty for al-Assad in exchange for securing access to the chemical weapons sites to neutralize the threat. Russia's price for such assistance would be a significant stake in the formation of a post-al-Assad government to protect Moscow's interest in the Levant. Iranian interests would also likely intersect with those of Russia. This may be unpalatable to the United States and its allies, but the United States is also highly intent on avoiding yet another major military engagement in the Middle East. Now let's talk about whether al-Assad would actually use his chemical weapons arsenals against in the civil war against the rebels, and or if he would send them out to attack other countries such as Israel. Well, I don't foresee him attacking any other country with his chemical weapons, even out of desperation. Now, if painted into a corner, would he use it against the rebel armies? That is up to speculation. Some people believe he would. Some people say they don't think that's going to be the case. But as we know, anytime somebody's painted into a corner, any of these lifetime dictators, such as the al-Assads and the Mubaraks and the Gaddafis, they do strange things. So as you know, crazier things have happened. But frankly, I foresee that it's probably going to end in some type of arrangement in which al-Assad and his associates are sent off to either Latin America or some other country to live out the rest of their lives in exile. Frankly, nobody, the United States, Israel, Russia, or anyone else, or any of the allies of the United States, European Union, want to get involved in another intervention, such as the one that took place in Libya. So not only the United States, but every country is trying to avoid that from taking place. And it wouldn't shock me a bit if they were able to come to an agreement before the end of the year. But that may be pretty optimistic. But one thing you should note that the chemical weapons that Syria have are not exactly that technical. Yeah, are they deadly? Sure they are. Can they cause significant damage? Yes, it's more psychological than actual damage. As I stated in another report I gave a number of months ago regarding Syria's their chemical weapons, in order for them to be effective, they do have to be concentrated in a small area in order for it to have the effect that would be necessary in order to cause panic. Now, of course, probably the biggest threat that these chemical weapons do create is falling into the wrong hands once al-Assad is removed. And that's really the biggest concern of the nations that are involved in this, such as the United States, Israel, and some of the others. But as Stratford has pointed out, even if they did fall into the hands of terrorists, they would have to have on board chemical weapons experts who know how to handle these types of biological weapons. And certainly I'm not an expert on the chemical weapons front, but the information I have read, it's not a situation in which you can just all of a sudden start dumping chemical weapons material into a bomb and then send it off. There is a bit of expertise that's necessary in order for it to have any type of maximum effect. But certainly the U.S., Israel, and some of the other nations certainly would not want to take a chance that possibility is out there. Now moving on to Iran. In the last couple of months, Israel has updated their forecast as to when they believe that Iran could achieve nuclear status. Of course, many in the prophetic world believe that it's probably going to be sooner than later. Now, this is what military analysts have said regarding the situation with Iran. And I can see why they think this as well. Even if Iran does achieve nuclear status, that certainly is not going to place Israel in imminent danger. Now, I can hear many listening to this right now gasping. But the truth of the matter is that Israel has 200 to 400 nuclear bombs. They also have the Iron Dome technology, which has proven to be able to knock down virtually any weapon that may be formed against them, with a very high success rate. So let's say, for instance, Iran does get their nuclear weapon, and it's about ready to be launched. Israel has been able to say, and in fact I just read a report a couple weeks ago, they said, listen, if Iran does develop any type of chemical weapons or nuclear weapons against us, we'll knock them out on their launch pad, or we'll knock them out en route to our area. So if they receive, let's say for instance they get 1 to 2 or 5 nuclear weapons, they send all 5 of them over here. The Iron Dome has the capability of knocking these weapons down, and if that be the case, Israel would suffer no casualties, and Iran in the counterstrike would basically cease to be a nation. Now, am I trying to advocate that Israel allow Iran to become a nuclear power? Absolutely not. All I'm trying to say is that you should take into consideration that Israel may be taking what is being said into their war rooms and saying, listen, we can control this situation even if they do get nuclear weapons. And it would not surprise me a bit if they come up with something that I talked about a year ago, in which they're saying the next technology that will be developed from the Stuxnet worm is the uncanny ability to actually take over a missile or a device from the person or from the country that sends maybe a missile toward Israel and redirects it back to the enemy target. So in essence, Israel is in the process of possibly coming up with a way in which once a missile is sent from its launch pad, that they will be able to take over control of it and possibly redirect it right back toward the location from which it came from. In essence, using Iran's nuclear arsenal against itself. Now, this isn't something I've dreamed up. This is something I actually read about in an analysis from an expert who says this is the next level and where it's heading toward from this Stuxnet technology that came out years ago. I haven't got any updates regarding that type of technology, but according to this expert, he indicated this is something that you could look forward to in the near future. And if Israel were to actually, or the United States were to actually come up with some type of technology in which they could do that, I have a hard time believing they would allow anyone else to know that they have it. But Israel's ability to take over the various nuclear facilities that Iran has had and to cause their facilities to spin out of control and to do all kinds of crazy actions has proven that this technology is possible. So what do I see for the future? Well, as you know, I foresee that the rapture of the church is the next thing on God's calendar. I continue to look for the Middle East to spin out of control and to become more Islamicide, but I don't see a major conflict in the Middle East as far as an attack against Israel coming anytime soon. I know that probably disappoints those who are looking for some type of Ezekiel 38 and 39 Magog and Gog war, or some type of Psalm 83 war scenario. But I look for those wars probably to take place either just after the rapture, the beginning of the tribulation period, or sometime in that time span. But frankly, nobody knows the future, and we don't know what's going to take place other than the fact that they will take place. And in closing, I'd just like to say that if you don't know the Lord, your time is running out. You need to make that decision. We are in the last days, and the Lord is about ready to come and rapture His church. This is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.